All right, here with his take. I admit it publicly. He's a friend of mine. We don't agree a lot on politics. It's ESPN host. He's a rock star. There is no, as far as I'm concerned, there is no ESPN without my friend Stephen A. Smith. I watched you on The View today. How you doing?
All right. How you doing, Sean? Congratulations on the election, the results.
Thank you.
You called it. You said it was going to happen. I can't refute it. I can't refuse the fact that the president of the United States, the president-elect, is well deserving of it. It was a romp. It was an annihilation. I know a lot of people are trying to, label it like, what, he won a little bit in a lot of different places. I don't want to hear that. He won, and he won in absolutely convincing fashion, so much so that I think that in light of those results, we have to look at this election as a referendum on the Democratic Party and America saying, we're not feeling where you are. We're not feeling where you tried to go. We want no part of it. We're not having it. And they made their choice, and we all have to accept it.
And you were very gracious, by the way, privately. We have our own conversations, and you said that to me, and I'll live with it. And I've had elections that I really wanted my side to win that they lost. And you know what, Stephen A., I go on, and I plow through, and I do my job. There's not going to be retribution. None of the hosts of The View are going to be taken off. I used to go on that show. They wouldn't even they wouldn't accept a conversation with me at this point. Isn't that pretty pathetic? Because I used to like Whoopi Goldberg. Joyless Behar, she's a little, yeah.
I would ask that you don't look at the show. What you should look at is the ideological tilt that has taken place in our country. We've gotten to a point where, God forbid, somebody has a difference of opinion and a different form of ideology, then you're damn near the Antichrist. And that's not what makes this country great. I mean, the reality is that, we could sit up there and we could say what we want, and everybody has their different opinions about Donald Trump. You know how I felt. You knew why I didn't vote for him. I don't like the way he behaves. I think the presidency is a statesmanship position, and I think that level of hubris that he's accustomed to showing needs to be dialed back significantly. But having said that, the bottom line is simple. You can look at a lot of things on the right or the left. He talked about the economy. Okay, Biden inherited, what was it, like 1.5% in terms of inflation. It ballooned to over 9.1% before it got dialed down a little bit. We looked at open borders. Barack Obama was once considered the deporter in chief because he actually deported more folks than Donald Trump. But Biden comes into office, and the first thing he does, day one, executive order, he opens the borders. And obviously that created so much tension. And then you look at the culture wars, the identity politics, some of the transgender issues that people were bringing up in terms of individuals transitioning from male to female and wanting to participate in female sports and stuff like that, or sharing the same bathroom as females and all of this other stuff. America said, hey, we're not down for that. We're not going for it. And no matter what you try to throw in our direction, that's not what we're concerned about. We're primarily concerned about the economy. We're primarily concerned about our borders and about being safe. And they voted that way to send that message. And all we've heard over the last couple of days is folks going absolutely bat crazy because the candidate that they preferred to win didn't win. And I just want to take a moment to remind everybody, this is America. Guess what? Sometimes you don't get what you want. But we are known for having intestinal resolve and making sure we're able to march forward and work with whichever candidate ends up being in office and winning, and find a way to work with one another and reach some degree of compromise so we have civility in this country instead of chaos. It's going to be up to Donald Trump to contribute to that, no doubt. But the way I've seen some of the Democrats reacting since Kamala Harris lost, to be quite honest with you, is utterly ridiculous. I'm not going to get into any names, but it's been utterly ridiculous.
So here's the deal. They do not. The only reason that they are looking inwardly is because Donald Trump won the popular vote. That's the only reason. That's the reason I put such an emphasis on securing the popular vote, that no matter where you were, you had to go punch Trump's ticket. You had to do it. And what you see happening right now is the reason. He's telling you point blank. He was talking about the border. He was talking about the economy. He was talking about things that the American people are actually concerned with. Most people are not concerned with the color of Kamala Harris's skin. That doesn't put food on anyone's table. Now, I am going to show you something, and I just need you to see this. Okay, once again, this is going to be kind of like, look at this video as a tour. All right, and I am your intrepid tour guide, and I just want to give you some, I don't know, insight. Okay. Now, some of you are going to balk at this, but take a look at this. Psalm 14:1. The fool has said in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt. They have done abominable works. There is none who does good. I know what some of you were thinking. Still, I didn't click that thumbnail to go to Sunday school. I want to talk about Trump and these morons that are going berserk. I understand that. You just got to hear me out. Okay? I'm the tour guide. Okay? You're the tour guide. Whatever. Okay? So, I'm just trying to give you some insight here. Notice what is said. The fool has said in his heart. In other words, they don't scream it from the rooftop. They don't yell it in a bullhorn on Main Street. He says, no, the fool said in his heart. In other words, the only person that actually knows is God, because you can't see a person's heart. But that's what God judges, the heart. But God is wise and very, very practical. So he gives you some insight as to who these people are. He says, they are corrupt. They have done abominable works. There is none who does good. They're not contributing to anything. They're just sucking up air. He said, this is the way that you'll know. He said, I, God, the fool says in his heart. In other words, God knows. You don't. But he gives you a clue as to who you can look at. Now, where does the corruption come in? Well, because there is no God. In other words, there are no consequences for our actions. We can work with impunity and nothing will befall us. Why? Well, there is no God. We can be corrupt. We can do horrible, god-awful things. It won't matter. Why? Well, because they say in their heart, there is no God. God is just giving you a clue. Okay? He's saying these people that believe they can go through their life with no consequences, those are the ones who believe that there is no God. This is why they yell abortion, 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 because they don't want to pay any consequences for their actions. This is why they do this bail thing. You just want to let prisoners go. Why? Because they don't want any consequences for the actions. This is why they passed this ridiculous law that says as long as you are looting things that you need, as long as you are shoplifting something that does not exceed $900, you can do it. Why are they doing that? Because they don't want to pay any consequences, because they believe that there is no God. You see, God is the equalizer, which is why they hate conservatives. Now, as we're going through what I'm about to show you, this is your framework from now on, okay? All right, then. Here we go.
You know, one thing, when I'm on your show, I do all the talking. When you're on my show, I let you do all the talking. We kind of have this unspoken agreement, because I always, but together when we have conversations, they're really thoughtful conversations. They're real. We keep it real. Okay. You know, you always tell me to stay in my lane politics. I tell you to stay in your lane sports, but you're making a lot of sense tonight, and they would be wise to listen to you, and more importantly, the spirit in which you're telling it, and I give you a lot of credit for that.
See, what he just said, I'm talking about Stephen A. Smith, he's saying things that Democrats just absolutely refuse to hear. They refuse to hear it. Once again, the only reason that there is any reflection at all is because Donald Trump won the popular vote. So what Stephen A. Smith is saying is what they need to hear, but the women on The View can't hear it. And I'm going to prove to you, they can't hear it. They are not listening. They do not care.
You know, here's where I see it, and tell me what you agree or disagree with. They could not run on one thing that they could point to where we were better off than we were 4 years ago. One major thing that improved the lives of the American people. The campaign ended with, you're a racist, you're a Nazi, you're a fascist, a misogynist. Even Barack Obama and Stacey Abrams calling African-American men misogynists and sexist. Stacey Abrams says they're racist. And a lot of what they said was just flat-out lies. Kamala told us for 3 years the border was secure. It was not. Everybody knew it wasn't. She said for 3 years that inflation was transitory and denied that we had an inflation problem. She also lied during the campaign, her final argument. She told American women, she told them that Donald Trump's going to sign a national abortion ban. That was a lie. She said Donald Trump will limit your access to contraception. That was a lie. She said that he would ban IVF. That was a lie. She tried to scare seniors and say that he's going to take away your Social Security and Medicare. He promised he would not do it. Benefits went up in his first term when he was president. So analyze that strategy. You can't run on what you did or what you succeeded at. So you're going to go to the lowest level, tell lies, and call people Nazis and fascists. Not a good strategy, Stephen A. Not nice either.
Well, I'm not going to deny that it's not the greatest strategy. I don't know if you're entirely, completely accurate in everything that you're saying, because I can think of lies that the other side as well. But I will say this to you. If you're Kamala Harris, what you could have done is lean on the reports that the economy was actually getting better, and it actually is in a good place compared to where it was. You could have acknowledged that, guess what?
Not true.
I was a bit wrong in the position that I took on the border. And obviously, it's not about flip-flopping. It's about me correcting the error of my ways. She didn't do that. But in the end, I will tell you, I'll do you a favor and tell you where the biggest crime came about from the Democratic Party. You had a situation with Biden, who promised to be a transitional president. He labeled himself a stopgap, somebody that was going to come in there, sort of calm the waters, and then move out the way for a young blood to come into the fray, and new blood rather to come into the fray and be the next president of the United States. There was supposed to be a red wave in the midterms. It didn't happen. What does he do? He's the incumbent. He gets comfortable and says, I'm not going anywhere. And that threw everything up in flux. So suddenly he's debilitated a bit. The cognitive decline is something that we were witnessing. People were noticing it but didn't want to speak about it. You let him go on stage and get embarrassed. June 27th, 3.5 weeks later, you elevate her. She never went through a primary or anything like that, which raised question marks. And then what do you do from there on, Sean? You've got you obviously they felt they needed to do whatever they could to get votes. This is what they were doing, and it didn't work.
Here's the thing, and I'm going to go into this a little bit more, but Joe Biden had one mandate: get rid of Donald Trump and Trumpism. make sure that it never rears its ugly mega head again. You see, and here's the irony. We have Donald Trump because of the failures of Obama. That's the reason people voted for Donald Trump. They didn't want Hillary. They knew that that was going to be Obama 2.0. And then once he's kicked out, Biden says, I'm going to get rid of everything that even the Trump residue. But his incompetence ends up leading to Donald Trump being way more popular than he ever was and way more powerful. And then has been given a mandate. I know that some of you don't believe it was a mandate. It is. When you get the popular vote, you get the Senate, and we're probably going to get the House. That's called a mandate. We want change, and we're headed in the wrong direction. Everything that Biden said he was going to do, he didn't do. And a large part of that came from Jill, because she loves being the first lady.
It didn't work, and that's what you have to applaud. The American people have spoken. They said, we're not going for that. We're looking at policies. We're not going for all of that.
One last question. We don't have a lot of time. She never had to explain one time why she co-sponsored the Green New Deal, $93 trillion, and said she'd eliminate the filibuster. She never had to explain her position on gun mandatory buyback. She never had to explain why she said the rioters in 2020, 574 of them, won't stop, shouldn't stop, and she won't stop supporting them. She never had to explain. She never had to explain, you know, why we're going to pay for free sex change operations for illegal immigrants.
Can I help you out?
And give them amnesty when they don't respect our laws. Will you agree with me, and we have 30 seconds for you to answer, that legacy media is dead? Do you agree or disagree?
I'm not going to say it's dead because I'm holding out hope that it can be resuscitated. But hold on to this moment,
It's
Sean,
dead.
because it's a rarity. Hold on to this for the rest of your life, okay? I am going to agree with you from the standpoint that what was done was inexcusable because it was favoritism in the media, and it had no place in it for a presidential election. You got to call balls and strikes, and that's not what people on both sides are doing, but especially the left over the last couple of days. They ain't calling balls and strikes, and they're wrong. You're right, and it's your day. Enjoy it. It's a rare moment, but you got it.
So you get a sense now that people who are actually sincere about this, like Stephen A. Smith, is like, hey, look, you won. America said we ain't feeling what you're giving. We ain't buying what you're selling. We don't like the way the country is going. That's a tough boulder to roll up a hill. So then you got this.
The Washington Post, Matt Bai, writes in part, I do think the prosecutions fed a narrative of Trump as a victim. I also think Democrats dug themselves into a hole on cultural issues and identity politics. Trump's vicious transgender ad in the closing weeks, she's for they, them, he's for you, was probably the most effective of the cycle. I think that probably landed with a lot of traditionally Democratic voters who feel like the party is consumed with the cultural issues, while the economic issues don't really change. I think people needed a reason to feel good and hopeful about voting for her, and absent that, a lot of frustrated voters apparently decided to go with the guy who wants to burn it all down.
Let's dig a little deeper.
This notion that Donald Trump wants to burn it all down. Why in heaven's name, if you want to burn it all down, do you build a wall? I mean, just common sense. Why would you build a wall Why would you want to institute, targeted tariffs if you want to burn it all down? Why in the world would you want manufacturing to return from to the United States from overseas? Why would you want that if you're going to burn it all down? People just need to ask themselves questions. When you're listening to these people, you just got to ask yourself some really, elementary questions. Like that made no sense. But this is what I need you to pay attention to. Remember, what was the framework? The fool says in his heart, there is no God. Why? Because they're corrupt. They don't want any consequences for their actions. Okay? Listen to this.
Because you have that stacked on top of what happened on college campuses this fall, stacked on top of what's been happening on college campuses over the past 4 or 5 years. I have said this on the air, and every time I've said it, people said, oh, you're just saying that because you're a white conservative. No, I'm just saying it because every day.
I'm sorry, I have to stop you there. Joe, you're not a conservative. You're white. I'll give you that part. But you're not a conservative. Please don't tell me you're a conservative and then you go vote for Kamala Harris. Unless you're telling me you voted for Donald Trump, the more conservative candidate. You can't vote for a socialist and then tell the world you're a conservative. You can't vote for a person who is advocating for an open border and then say you're a conservative. But I digress.
Democrat that we have ever sat down with dinner with over the past 5 years who have kids that go to colleges say their kids are afraid to speak in class because they'll be canceled. Let me say that again. And they're all Democrats. Everybody that we've had dinner with, if they have a kid in college, you go, how the Red Sox going? Yeah, fine. Yeah. Sitting there eating. Beautiful day today, wasn't it? Yeah. My daughter at University of Virginia, she's afraid to raise her hand in class because if she says something that's politically incorrect, she will immediately be canceled. She'll be shunned from class. She'll be destroyed in social media by noon. So they just sit in class quiet. Now, if any of you, which camera? Give me a camera to look at. Boom! Oh, look at that one. If any of you out there say, oh, that's just like a conservative, white, Southern guy, da-da-da, that's where you're losing. That's where you're losing. Because that's what I heard. And I didn't hear it from Republicans. I didn't hear it from Trumpers. I heard it from Democrats over the past 3 or 4 years. Their kids were afraid to talk in class and say something unpopular because they would be canceled.
Now, just stop and think. These are Democrats. Huh. These weren't Trumpers? By his own admission, these are not Republicans. These are Democrats. But they won't say anything. They won't say anything. They won't challenge this ridiculous notion that men can get pregnant. You better not say anything. Why? Well, you'll get canceled, particularly on college campuses. By the way, I have proof.
And it's an epidemic. Willie will tell you it happens in New York City schools. It happens in colleges. And all of this adds up to people going, come on, this is crazy. Yeah. And Mike, it's having an impact from, again, the trans ad to, the athletics. And by the way, as we've said on the show 1,000 times, Democrats should be smarter on the women's athletics thing. 85% of Americans oppose men transitioning after puberty and competing against women. And I'm not just saying this the day after the election. I've been saying this for years. This is not a hard call. You can show compassion and you can show grace. And as the Republican governor of Utah said, let's figure out a way to do this. But one way we don't do this is by allowing men who transition after puberty competing against young girls who have been working their entire lives to be as good as they can be, and then they get destroyed in the pool, on the track, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
The Washington Post.
So, where do you think that came from? Because that wasn't the Joe Scarborough that I've seen. By the way, everything that he just said, that's what Donald Trump was saying. I'm telling you, the only reason for this self-reflection is because we got the popular vote. Now, for those of you who don't know, pay very close attention, because this is what he was talking about.
Ms. Robinson, do you agree with Ms. Gaines that there's a difference between women and men?
If the question is about trans women,
I'm just asking, is there a difference between women and men?
what I can say here is that the NCAA has rules in place. They've had rules in place for the last decade, and when this competition
Okay, I'm
happened,
going to try again.
the rules were clear.
Do you believe there's a difference between women and men? It's a yes/no question. Do you believe there's a difference?
Oh, I think that we're talking about this case with the NCAA.
No, I'm asking a question. Do you believe there's a difference between women and men? Most people could answer this very simply. I'm curious if you're willing to do so.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just putting it into the context of the conversation that we're having. I think that there are definitions related to sex.
Is
but
that
I
a
also
yes?
think
So I'm
that
trying to
when
get a yes or no. I'm not trying to get a speech.
Is
there a difference between women and men?
I think that there are definitions for biological sex.
Okay, so you're
which
not
is
answering
different
that.
than
Let me ask
gender.
you this question then. Why do women's sports exist? If you can't define a difference between women and men, why not abolish women's sports and just tell little girls to swim with little boys and see who wins?
Oh, I'm simply saying that that sex is different than gender.
Why
and I do believe that
women's
sports have a great
exist?
value. I mean, Senator, I'll tell you right
Ms.
now.
Robinson, please answer the question I'm asking you.
Absolutely.
Why do women's sports exist?
I think that there are so many positive benefits to sports.
But
I mean,
why have a
we've talked
separate
about it here
category for
today.
women? If there's no difference between women and men, why to have women's sports?
I'm saying that there's a difference between sex and gender, and that the NCAA has rules in place, which they have for the last decade.
Mr. Chairman,
which
I would
determine
like to
that
enter into
related
the
to
record an
participation.
article from Duke Law called Comparing Athletic Performances for the Best Elite Women to Boys and Men. And it goes through examining in 2017 the top records for women in the world in various track and field events. So, for example, in the 100-meter, the top record for women in the world was 10.71 seconds. Now, that record for the number one woman in the world in 2017 was, in the year 2017, broken by 124 boys under 18. In that same year, the record for the number one competing woman in the 100-meter dash in the world was broken by a total of 2,474 men.
But they want men to compete against women. By the way, they put it in the Title IX. Effectively telling women, you don't have a place here. Because if we get this man, we're going to give them deference. No. It's hang on, because it gets even worse.
Professor Bridges, you said several times, you've used a phrase, I want to make sure I understand what you mean by it. You've referred to people with a capacity for pregnancy. Would that be women?
Many women, cis women, have the capacity for pregnancy. Many cis women do not have the capacity for pregnancy. There are also trans men who are capable of pregnancy, as well as non-binary people who are capable of pregnancy.
So this isn't really a women's rights issue.
We can recognize that this impacts women while also recognizing that it impacts other groups. Those things are not mutually exclusive, Senator Hawley.
Oh, so your view is that the core of this right then is about what?
So I want to recognize that your line of questioning is transphobic, and it opens up trans people to violence by not recognizing that.
Wow, you're saying that I'm opening up people to violence by asking whether or not women are the folks who can have pregnancies?
So I want to note that 1 out of 5 transgender persons have attempted suicide. So I think it's important
Because of
for
my
us-
line of questioning? So
Because-
we can't talk about it?
Because denying that trans people exist and pretending not to know that they exist
I'm
is
denying that trans
dangerous.
people exist by
Are
asking
you?
you if you're
Are
talking
you?
about women
Are you?
having pregnancies.
Do you believe that men can get pregnant?
No, I don't think women can
So
get
you are
pregnant.
denying that trans people exist?
And that leads to violence. Is this how you run your classroom? Are students allowed to question you, or are
Absolutely.
they also treated like this, where
No,
they're
they're
told
allowed
that they're
to question you.
opening up people to
Oh,
violence?
we have a good
by
time in my
questioning?
class. You should join.
Oh, I bet.
You might learn a lot.
Wow, I would learn a lot. I've learned a lot
I
just in this
know.
exchange.
Absolutely.
Extraordinary.
There you go. Not one Democrat stood up. Not one. That's why they lost. None of this is rocket science. They stand with this ridiculous notion that men can get pregnant. And so that's what you get. It's unbelievable. But then you have this.
You can't approach working people like missionaries and say, we're here to help you become more like us. There's a kind of unspoken disdain, unintended disdain in that. I think Biden has done, programmatically some good things for working people, but the party itself has increasingly become a smarty pants, suburban, college-educated party, and it lends itself to the kind of backlash that we've seen.
The party of the smarty pants. We're better than you. We know more than you. We are evolved. This is their reasoning for not needing God. They're progressives. They don't need God. In fact, you'll hear them say that I don't need God to know that it's bad or wrong to murder or to treat someone unkindly. They'll tell you, I don't need God to know that. As if somehow that's the only reason to have a God-centered life. Just like, but what he's telling you is they became the party of the smarty pants. We're educated. You're not. Nah, 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 nah. That's what they were doing. You're not evolved. That's why we're never inviting you to our swanky dinner parties, because you're not evolved like us. And what he said, you can't approach the voters like missionaries. We're here to make you more like us. By the way, that's not the job of the missionary. The job of the missionary is not to change the culture. It's to introduce the Christ to a Christianless society. And then you let God do the rest. Your job is not to impose your culture. But I digress.
A lot of finger pointing right now in the Democratic Party. Some who are saying, look, had President Biden not announced, to try to get reelected, and we all know how that transpired later on, perhaps this wouldn't be the situation. And we'll never be able to know, right? What do you say to that?
I'm going to speak some hard truths to my friends in the Democratic Party. This is not Joe Biden's fault. It's not Kamala Harris's fault. It's not Barack Obama's fault. It is the fault of the Democratic Party in not knowing how to communicate effectively to voters. We are not the party of common sense, which is what the message that voters sent to us. For a number of reasons. We don't know how to speak to voters. When we address Latino, and language has meaning. When we address Latino voters as Latinx, for instance, because that's the politically correct thing to do. It makes them think that we don't even live on the same planet as they do.
Latinx. Latinx. Like, you know what they think about that? Like, I guarantee you that came from some highly educated white liberal. Latinx. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, do you live on this planet? Who does that?
When we are too afraid to say that, hey, college kids, if you're trashing a campus at Columbia University because you're unhappy about some sort of policy and you're taking over a university and you're trashing it and preventing other students from learning, that is unacceptable. But we're so worried about alienating one or another cohort in our coalition that we don't know what to say when normal people look at that and say, wait a second, I send my kids to college so they can learn, not so that they can burn buildings and trash lawns, right?
If they were to stand up and say, hey, this is wrong, you're called a racist. You're contributing to the conflict in the Middle East. Hey, that university is there to help you learn. That's what she's talking about. Common sense. They are not the party of common sense. But by the way, I'm going to prove it to you. Here, hold on a second, because.
And so on and so forth. When we put pronouns after names and say she, her, as opposed to saying, you know what, if I call you by the wrong pronoun, call me out. I'm sorry, I won't do it again. But stop with the virtue signaling and just speak to people like they're normal. There's nothing I'm going to say to Michael that I'm not going to say to you, that I'm not going to say to somebody else. I speak the same language to everybody. But that's not what Democrats do. We constantly try to parse out different ways of speaking to different cohorts because our focus groups or our polling shows that so-and-so appeals to such and such. That's not how normal people think. It's not common sense. And we need to start being the party of common sense again. Joe Biden is not responsible for that. Neither is Kamala Harris. It is a problem that Democrats have had for years. I've been banging the drum on this for, I don't know how, probably 10 years, if not longer on this. We need to get back to being the party of common sense, that people look at us and say, we understand you. We appreciate what you say because you speak our language. And until we do that, we should stop blaming other people for our own mistakes.
So what are the odds that they're actually going to do that? I'm actually heartened to know that they're not going to do that. They're going to continually do exactly what they've been doing. Here, hang on a second. You probably think, still you don't know what you're talking about. Look at this. Headline. Karine Jean-Pierre blames Kamala's loss on the pandemic. It's like, what? What are you talking about? That just doesn't make any sense. That's like so far in the rearview mirror now. Like, what are you talking about? Hold on a second, because it gets it gets so much better.
We are about to enter a political period that will have consequences for the rest of our lives. We cannot give up. We now find ourselves in a time in history that has precedent, and we find ourselves, I believe, in a time where there are, let's say, peers in history of mass movements of people that mobilize to protect one another in times of fascism and authoritarianism. And this is the era that we are poised to enter. Donald Trump has talked about turning the military on U.S. citizens that he deems his domestic political enemies.
No, he hasn't. People like this, people that actually lead in their party, don't see it. Like, I mean, it goes right over their head. You would think that at this point it'd be like, wow, hey, boy, we need to really change some things. No, Nope. Hey, whether you like this or not, she's one of their leaders. AOC is one of their thought leaders. Yeah. You didn't know that? She's not giving up. She's still parroting the same lies. She wants to be part of the, we need to start the resistance. It's like, what are you talking about? I thought you were all about democracy. I thought the people's choice. I thought that it was all about what the people wanted. Apparently, no, it isn't. It's about what she wants. There is no cure for this. I wish there was. There's no cure for this. Which is why I told you, the fool says in his heart that there is no God. They want to live in a world where you can ruin women's sports and there are no consequences. You can create inflation and there are no consequences. That's why when God says, the fool says in his heart that there is no God, they're corrupt. They believe there are no consequences for their actions. And right now, the only people that are telling them, hey, like Joe Scarborough, Stephen A. Smith, that pundit from CNN, trying to tell them, hey, it's you. The country is just not into you. They can't hear it. Look at her. She's like matter of fact. It's remarkable. All right. Now, do you guys remember the Iowa poll that said Kamala Harris was +3? Now, here's a little, and this is an anecdote, I guess. When I posted that video for the entire day, I'm talking about the Iowa poll that says Kamala Harris had a +3 advantage over Trump. +3. What? What are you talking about? Yeah. This is the woman who said it. And now she's going to give you what I can't believe I was wrong. Iowa pollsters make bombshell claim about controversial poll that show Kamala winning deep red state after Trump's triumphant victory. It's like, chick, you're dead wrong. The Iowa pollster who made the wildly inaccurate prediction that Kamala Harris would win in deep red state now claims her mistake may have actually helped Donald Trump. You don't, you don't say. Actually, it didn't. The prediction didn't help. Kamala was never going to win Iowa. That was never going to happen. And let me give you my logic as to saying that. Okay? When Obama was running, he won Iowa twice. And then they flipped to Donald Trump. Okay? Absolutely rejecting Hillary Clinton. Why? They knew that it was going to be more of the same. And then Donald Trump won twice. He won Iowa in 2016 and in 2020. In 2020, when the country was going berserk about Donald Trump saying that he is the reason that your babies are being killed, he's the reason that women are being killed. I mean, Donald Trump was he was the blame of everything, the bane of society. We got to get rid of this guy. In 2020, Trump won Iowa. The height of, TDS. I mean, the virus was going berserk. The TDS virus. He still won. But then I was supposed to believe that now, after Biden has actually ruined the country, ruined the economy, that they're going to flip and vote for Kamala, whose job approval rating is actually worse than Joe's. That was I thought, well, this isn't going to happen. Ann Seltzer, previously renowned for her predictions in the Hawkeye state, admitted her research was completely wrong and might have even emboldened Mega Nation. Quote, I told more than one news outlet that the findings from this last poll could actually energize and activate Republican voters who thought they would likely coast to victory. It had the opposite effect. We knew we still had to vote. Why? Because we wanted that popular vote. Seltzer added that she was thinking about how we got where we are. Now, I need to show you guys something. And it's going to be a bit maddening, okay? This is not going to make a whole lot of sense, but I just need you to pay really close attention. Now, I'm letting you know I sped up this video, okay?
No one saw it coming, not even the polls. President-elect Donald Trump.
In the last big election.
So how did the pollsters in the Clinton campaign get it so wrong?
You know, the one in 2016.
How did the polls miss this?
Polls took a beating.
There is going to be an incredible, long, deep, rigorous autopsy done on the polling that pervaded this campaign.
It was horrific.
Public polling.
So why should anyone believe what they say now?
The conventional wisdom out of the 2016 election was that polls were broken. But polls, in fact, were much more accurate than many people thought. National polls showed Clinton with a slight edge, about 3 percentage points, and she ended up winning the national popular vote by 2. At the state level, there was a consistent underestimation of Trump's support. And post-election analysis found that this was partly due to late deciders swinging in Trump's direction, but also due to an overrepresentation of college-educated voters, something that polls need to fix in the upcoming elections.
It begins with a phone, a screen, and some questions. Simple enough.
A special counsel at the U.S. Justice Department, Robert Mueller, note there that is pronounced Mueller and not Mueller.
But when something's called a scientific poll, nothing is so simple.
Let's tear it up tonight, guys.
Let's start with the phone numbers, all random, chosen by a computer. From mobile phones to the old-fashioned landline, everybody with a phone number has an equal chance of getting called. You likely have to call more than 20,000 numbers to end up with a poll of 1,000 real-life people. A big chunk of those calls just don't work out. They're not in service, they're business lines, or belong to a fax machine. Remember those?
Now don't check out. Pay attention.
Polls can focus on different populations, which may impact results. Most polls seek out adults 18 and up. Others only interview registered voters, a group that is more politically engaged and leans slightly more Republican. The trickiest polls are those of likely voters, because you have to identify people likely to vote in a particular election. But it's impossible to survey everyone in the country. So here comes the math. Once the calls are done, pollsters do calculations, ensuring the survey reflects the entire population. We're talking age, education, race, regions of the country. This is where it gets heavy. All those factors are given statistical weight. The relatively small, random sample ends up speaking for entire groups. Here's how weighting works. Take age. Those responding to the poll are split into age groups that are then compared to census data on the entire population. If younger people make up a smaller portion of the poll, but there's more of them in real life, they're weighted up to match their appropriate share. If a polling sample overrepresents an age group, surveying more of one group than is in the larger population, they're weighted down. In the end, it all matches. The larger the survey sample and the more random, the better the chance the poll reflects the population as a whole. But because polls don't interview the entire population, they can't precisely say what the opinions of Americans are. But they can get close. No matter the size of the population, a random sample of 1,000 adults should come within plus or minus roughly 3 percentage points of the country overall. You may have heard about this. It's called the margin of error, and it's powerful because it shows the power of random sampling. Which brings us back to that survey center in Fort.
This is the survey center. I need you to pay attention. Okay? You're watching something that you don't know you're watching. You are seeing something that if you're not paying very close attention, you're missing it.
Mark Myers, support or oppose? In this era of caller ID and busy lives,
Here boldly.
random scientific polling has gotten harder. People aren't available.
Well, it only takes a moment. It's just opinions only.
Or just don't want to participate.
Sometimes some people are, very rude. Like one time I had someone blow a whistle in my ear through the phone.
This would be the wrong job if you feel like you get rejected. You can't do this because there's a lot of rejection, but it's not personal.
Studies show this hasn't hurt poll accuracy because some people
I'm Joshua Damon.
Still pick up the phone.
And would you say you feel that way strongly or somewhat?
There's a science behind what questions get asked.
Okay, I think that's enough. What do you take from that? Now, to give you some, inside baseball, this came from the Washington Post. You see, the Washington Post actually asked firms like this to do a poll. CNN, ABC, NBC, they do the same thing. My guess is Fox does too. They go to these institutions and ask them to do a poll. Now, were you paying attention? Did you see it? I hope you could. There are a lot of phones. Wow. The phone bill must be through the roof. Employees. They're probably paying those employees. Wow. Hey, the building they were in is probably leased. My point is, computers, those computers that they're using, are not free. Now, perhaps those institutions, like the one you see on the screen, maybe they're doing it for CNN and MSNBC and ABC, and maybe they're doing it for them out of the goodness of their heart. That's possible. Highly improbable, however. My guess is CNN has to pay them. Otherwise, how are you going to pay for all that fancy equipment? Were you paying attention? You see all the phones, all the computers, all the employees? Now, I don't know that maybe they're volunteers. Possible. I doubt it. I doubt it. Okay? They're doing it for a paycheck. So let me ask you something. CNN goes to this firm and says, we want a poll on whether or not Donald Trump is going to win, I don't know, Iowa. And so they'll come out with a poll using the methodology that you just saw. What's happening in the background is that firm, are they really going to do a study? Are they really going to conduct a poll that kills the goose that lays the golden egg, in this instance, like CNN? knowing that CNN has a certain bent for their viewers? Once again, I have no proof of it. I'm a guy that's on the outside. Like, I'm not even in the stadium. In fact, I'm not even in the parking lot. I'm out on the street. But every now and again, I can hear the cheers. And whenever I hear Trump, I can hear the cheers. Once again, I'm not on the inside. I'm not in the stadium. I'm way outside on the street. But I can still hear people cheering for Donald Trump. So when someone comes to me and tells me people don't like him, something tells me different. You see, this is what I'm trying to get you to see. They have a vested interest in swaying, skewing, if you would, the poll data. Let's say you come to CNN and says, it looks like Donald Trump is going to trounce you. Donald Trump is going to whop, he's going to clean up the floor with her. You think they're going to come back to you? You think that the CNN is going to hire you again? They don't want to hear that. Now, there was someone on CNN who said, hey, this stuff looks really good for Donald Trump. So when I saw Iowa for Kamala, it literally made no sense at all. None. Chiefly because I believe, why would they kill the goose that lays the golden egg? Look, this is, the Washington Post. They're trying to tell you how polls work. But what this woman did, well, she's trying to now clean up. She told all those outlets that Donald Trump was going to lose. And it was a trouncing. I think Kamala got like 43% and he had 55. I mean, that is an enormous difference. How could she have gotten it that wrong? Unless she had to get it that wrong. Because there were publications that were running with it. Telling them what they want to hear. You're telling them what they want to hear. Once again, now, Donald Trump kind of like cracked this wide open. He told Joe Rogan, look, these polling people, these organizations, these companies, they charge you $500,000 to do a poll. They take 1,000 people, and that's supposed to represent the rest of the 350 million of us. And you're supposed to just buy it. Wow, these polls were really busted. You don't say. And then, by the way, they have yet to figure out the Trump supporter. They've admitted it as much. We don't know how to poll them. If you don't know how to poll something that's actually running for the president, why in the world are you giving in polls? You're giving something that is inaccurate at best. But if you're giving the people what they want to hear, who am I hurting? I'm just telling you. I showed you. They got to pay for all those phones. I mean, their phone bill must be through the roof. They're calling all those people all over the nation? All over the nation? Where do you think that money is coming from? Well, that money comes from CNN and ABC and NBC and MSNBC and Fox News and everybody else that wants them to do a poll for them. That's why you can't believe them. I was talking to a friend of mine. What was it? Last Sunday. I'm talking to a friend of mine, and he was really distraught about Kamala winning. And he asked me, so what do you think? I was like, about Kamala. Man, I'm kind of worried, man. I think she's going to win. I go, what are you talking about? He said, no, everything that I'm hearing, because those polls are telling him, hey, man, it looks like, oh, how many times did you hear it was neck and neck? How many times did you hear that? How many times did you hear, woo, this is going to be a nail biter? How many times did you hear that it was, wow, this race is really, really close? And I told him point blank, she's going to get trounced. He goes like, what? I go, she's going to get annihilated. She will not be the next president. She's not presidential. She is going to get annihilated. He was like, well, I hope you're right, but everything that I hear, right, everything that you hear. That's the reason they're telling you that. So that you think, oh, she's already won. That's what people were saying about the Iowa poll. There's one woman that told you she's +3. It's like, she is? Like, in a pig's eye. And I told him, no. She's gonna be annihilated. Now, how did I know that? How could I have possibly? Remember, I told you guys months ago, yeah, she's not gonna win. It's like, yeah. She's like horrible. And then she chose even a more horrible vice president. It's like it wasn't enough to have Kamala, who is god awful. They got someone that if he's talking, he's lying. It's almost as if, and I'm not kidding, they kind of knew we can't win with this duo. So we're going to give this one away. Because guess who's really happy right now? Gavin Newsom and Josh Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania. They're really happy right now. Whew. It wasn't me. I wasn't there. Trust me, they are elated. Now, the one that's most excited, obviously, is Joe Biden. But trust me, Shapiro, Newsom, they're like, man, did we just dodge a major bullet? And I believe that the party knew she couldn't win. Because it just, if I'm like walking around in hippy dippy California and I don't see any support for her, look, people are going to go out and vote for her. Democrats are going to vote for her. It's like, okay, but there's no enthusiasm at all. She gave them nothing to be excited about, unless you like word salads. My friend was like distraught. Like, dude, calm down. She's not going to win. Like, I was as calm as a cucumber. I mean, even the night of the election, I didn't even care. I'm like, he's going to eat her lunch. It was Kamala Harris, everybody, against the orange bull of Wall Street. Just wasn't in the cards, man. It just was not in the cards. So I don't know what to tell you guys. But this whole polling thing is a joke. The bombshell admission comes as election returns continue to show good news for Trump. How did they get it wrong? Well, I just showed you how they got it wrong. How did they get those polls wrong? That's not the question you should be asking. You shouldn't ask the question, how did they get it wrong? The real question is, why did they keep telling everybody? That's the real question. Why was it being blasted on all these news networks, in the print media? Kamala Harris is going to win Iowa. she's +3. And then when people say, well, how'd you get it wrong? Guess what ends up happening? Well, the next, election cycle is in 2 years. Well, guess who they're going to go to? Her. Well, everybody will have forgotten. They'll ask her to do a poll. She'll get paid, and everything will be everything. I said the same thing about Hillary Clinton. She's not going to win. It's impossible. People don't like her. She's awful. I mean, she is like the Wicked Witch of the West, man. So you guys can tell me what you think. I just, I think all of this is great news for us. They are not taking it well. They think somehow, some way, the problem is with, Donald Trump, and he's mean-spirited, and he's gonna visit retribution on everybody. And now let me tell you this about retribution. Steve Bannon was just released from prison or jail, whichever. I think he spent 4 months or something like that. Do you know why he spent 4 months in jail? Contempt of Congress. Contempt of Congress. 4 months of his life wiped away. Contempt of Congress. Well, if we want to have equal application of the law, guess who else was found in contempt of Congress? Merrick Garland. Contempt of Congress. Steve Bannon had to go to jail. Donald Trump should absolutely go after Merrick Garland. Still, he's Attorney General. You know what the news is going to say? I don't care what the news is going to say. Steve Bannon was tossed in jail for contempt of Congress. Well, Merrick Garland had the exact same charge. And if Donald Trump goes after him, I think he should. And he should spend 4 months in jail. And let Joe Scarborough and CNN and let them all sling snot. But Steve Bannon had to go. What makes Merrick Garland so special? He was found in contempt of Congress. So the rules, the laws either apply to everyone or they don't. So I would absolutely support going after him. And I don't care. Now, here's we've got bigger fish to fry to get us out of this Bidenomics. We got a real problem that we got to dig ourselves out of. But putting Merrick Garland in jail is not off the table. And Trump needs to make the case. Steve Bannon was put in jail for the same thing that Merrick Garland is accused of. And then let the media try to spin it. Who cares? See, I'm not kidding either. Who cares? So if someone broke the law, I don't care if it's Liz Cheney. I don't care if it's Adam Kinzinger. I don't care if it's Bill Kristol or all of these other neocons. I don't care. If they broke the law, he should absolutely go after them. He's doing it. He's doing it. He's going for his political opponents. Did they break the law? Well, you guys tell me what you think. I'm completely 100% for that. All right, guys. For those of you who want to know what cigar this is the Bone Shaker. It is hand rolled from, and I've had several of these. You guys have already seen this. You know how good it is. These are so consistent. The draw, the build, they're just so consistent. You will not be disappointed. All right, guys, that's it for now. Hey, if you like this video, smash that like button and subscribe. And if you're following me on Rumble, please, baby, please press that follow button. And until the next time, God bless.